Alright, taking a moment to do another Turret on the Road video. This was going to be a little bit in two parts. So I'm going to cover it in separate spots. Two things are kind of going to be discussed here. One will be the purchase of Atari Age by Atari. And the second will be about the Atari 2600 Plus. I will be getting to those in a bit. Stay tuned. As I think about the Atari 2600, well, Atari Age, selling to the new Atari Corporation, I'm not really sure how I feel about that. To be honest, I never really expected there to be a homebrew market to erupt when it did. But it did. We're so used to these games being done in super secret, ultra corporate labs that to figure out how to do a game ourselves seemed like a near insurmountable task, especially as it took 5 to 7 months on average to make a game, and that's if you work in the industry. But then the homebrew market came into being. Old systems were being modded for today's TVs. New games were being made for these old systems, and even some cloned versions were coming out for them. So the homebrew market is here to stay, and people have been making these games in their basements, and I believe they'll continue to do so. It's not just limited to the Atari now, it's other systems in television, Nintendo, Vectrex, a whole shebang. But how do I feel about Atari Age selling to Atari? Well, this is not the same Atari. Those assets, I believe, half of them are still in the hands of Time Warner, and the other half, I believe, are in the hands of Hasbro when they split to Atari and Atari Games. But the name, the license, and the IP found itself in new hands, and as far as I know, privately owned hands. Atari Age is also a privately owned, I'm not sure I'd call it a company. It was a community. Homebrewers coming together, trying to chip away at the blocks of knowledge so they could bring their creations to life. And with Atari now buying the, trying to find the right word here, community site where a lot of these homebrew developers share their knowledge and share their visions, I think it opens the door for new talent to enter the industry. Because I believe with a lot of the established companies like Nintendo and Sony with the PlayStation, and I'd say Microsoft with the Xbox, they're going to be working with seasoned pros and seasoned vets. It's not exactly a place where you could get your first job. Currently with Atari, and especially with the Atari VCS, there's a lot of new developers that are getting their feet wet. I'd say probably even maybe getting their first jobs and their first sales with Atari for the VCS and maybe other platforms too. Atari is bringing in the homebrew developer and the indie. And that's a good thing, as it's bringing new talent to the dance. At least that's what I hope Atari is doing. I hope that's what their intent will be. But if not, I think a new community site will come into being, where new homebrewers will meet up and make new stuff. And hopefully they'll find their doors open to be new faces of the industry. I will admit I'm a little sad to Atari Age being sold to a corporation, even though Atari is not the corporation it was. I think it's a little more independent, as Atari Age was independent of everything else. Atari Age kept the torch bearing, and right now that torch is in Atari's hands. But Atari Age also is now part of the Atari corporate identity. Has it lost its independence? I can't say. I guess I want to look at this with guarded optimism. It opens a lot of doors for the Atari Corporation, but it also opens doors for new talent to enter the industry. At least I hope that is what will happen. I think with this one, time will tell. It always does. Okay, now for the 2600 plus. I've heard some off and on views on it. Some like it, some hate it. I saw one YouTube heading say, "Why do you hate it?" Well, me, I don't. I put myself down for one of the pre-orders. And I have a reason for doing that. I'm not getting this system just to have it. I'm going to be looking to put it to work for my own show. The modded Xbox that I use for my show, it's great. I've got a lot of content that I can work off of. But if you ever watch Gen X Grown Up, he mentioned at one time that it was for his Atari 50 review, which made use of D-pads and joystick types, especially with the paddle games. He mentioned that the system had to work the best they could to incorporate the paddle games as best they could. But in trying to incorporate paddle games for a joystick system, something gets lost in the translation. The movements are not as precise. I have run into that problem myself, especially when I did a video for the Star Wars Celebration. One of the games I included was Star Wars Jedi Arena. But it's like, I had to use the flipper buttons for that. Left flipper, right flipper, and I had to be real precise how I made use of the flippers. The lack of precision in using emulation for any type of controller is something a gamer has to work around. You can still have fun with the game, but you would have to work around the lack of precision in playing it. It's like you have to gingerly touch the button. How far do you go? How far do you nudge it? Or you just hard press all the way to the left and hard press all the way to the right, and that's the end of that. In using the 2600 Plus, at least this is my game plan, I should be able to cover paddle games with a lot more reliability. I can be a little more precise in playing the games and sharpen a little bit of reflexes here and there. I could play Night Driver and go around the twists and turns a little better, not hit things on a recurring basis. Not that I wouldn't, even with the paddle. But you'd be more control being used to the paddle games. Night Driver, Breakout, Warlords. And also, you get another set of paddles. You can have a nice little family night. Family and friends, 4 of them, each with a paddle game. You could try to destroy each other's castles in a Warlords game, or take turns in a 4-player version of Breakout. And that's not all. I also want to see if the keyboard controller games will work for this. Because even with the modded Xbox, the keyboards get no love. And there are a few keyboard games that I think are deserving of attention. Keyboard is usually regulated to educational titles, and pretty much memory games. I think there are about 4 or 5 for those. So I'll want to see if the keyboard controllers will work with the 2600 Plus. And one other, the driving controller. Especially in regards to Indy 500. And not just Indy 500. I'm not sure I should be letting you in on this little info yet, because I don't know if this will pan out completely. But I hope to make my 2600 Plus review in December. It's supposed to be released and shipped out in November. That should give me a month to tinker with it, work with it, plan things out. To an extent. I'll definitely be working with the paddle games, paddle controls. But I also want to include the driving controller if I can. I have a homebrewed game that I would like to try for it. I'll see if it works or not. December is usually the time where I try to look for a Christmas game in my system and give it a review along with a standard review. I've done this twice so far. This would hopefully be the 3rd year. I have a homebrewed cartridge of Christmas-themed games. I want to see if this works. And if it does, I'm going to have my review for December. So at this point in time, Stay tuned. We'll see what happens. I think of the word Atari. By all rights, this is a company that should have died years ago. It opened the doors to a lot of innovation, 70s and 80s, and also set the standards for others to follow. Started off with Pong consoles, went into arcade systems, and then the 2600. But then the crash of 83 happened, and the home market just fell kaputzi. Atari tried to keep as a success, but in some ways, I think the 2600, its biggest success was also its biggest trap. It became the identifier of the company. So much, I don't think anyone would have really accepted the 5200, even if it was more perfected, because the 2600 was where a lot of their childhood memories were. 7800, that might have been a maybe if it was promoted better. But Atari continued on with the Jaguar. Mixed reactions there. And I tried the Panther, but it didn't take. They went with the Jaguar instead. And the Lynx portable system. After that, it fizzled out. But the memory still lived on. And the innovation of the Atari fans showed as they looked to continue making new games, making their own creations in their own basements or whatever workspaces they had. That homebrew market is very inspiring. And I think this new Atari is looking to take advantage of that inspiration. Here's hoping it's successful. And maybe even this company with an old nostalgic childhood endearing name will bring in new blood and new innovation to this industry. Feel like I'm missing out on a game and want to nominate one of your own? Go ahead and check me out over on social media. See you all next time, and don't forget to click and subscribe.